For centuries, Mount Etna has towered over Sicily like a living titan, shaping the land with fire and ash. But in 44 BCE, something extraordinary happened. Just days after the assassination of Julius Caesar, Etna erupted with such force that a massive cloud of ash darkened the skies over Rome. To the people of the time, this wasn't just a natural disaster, it was an omen. The gods, they believed, were mourning, and the gates of the underworld had been flung open. This wasn't the first time Etna's fury had been linked to the supernatural. The ancient Greeks and Romans saw the volcano as a realm of gods and monsters, where the Cyclopes forged Zeus' thunderbolts, where Typhon, the most fearsome giant in mythology, was chained beneath the earth, and where the fires of the underworld glowed through the crater's mouth. Even in medieval Sicily, the legends continued, stories of dragons, demonic forces, and mystical warnings before each eruption. And even today, many Sicilians believe Etna has a mind of its own, a force that chooses when and where to unleash its destruction. Of course, modern volcanology offers a different explanation. Scientists now understand that Etna's eruptions are driven by shifting tectonic plates and magma movement. But for those living in its shadow, the myths still feel just as real. But what's the truth behind these myths? Could ancient eruptions have inspired these legendary stories? And what does archaeology reveal about the real history of Etna's fiery past? Welcome to Armchair Archaeology. In this episode, we're uncovering the epic myths and fascinating history of Mount Etna. And stay with us until the end, because we'll reveal the strange tale of a Greek philosopher who vanished into Etna's flames, only for the volcano to spit something back out. Let's begin. Before we start, make sure to subscribe to Armchair Archaeology. If you love uncovering ancient mysteries, lost civilizations, and historical deep dives, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. To the ancient Greeks, Mount Etna wasn't just a volcano, it was a divine workshop where flames and molten rock hinted at the gods working below. According to legend, deep inside its fiery depths lived the Cyclopes, one-eyed giants who crafted Zeus' mighty thunderbolts. Every eruption was thought to be the sparks from their forge, and the rumbling of the earth, that was the hammering of their enormous anvils. One of the most famous Cyclopes was Polyphemus, the monstrous son of Poseidon. In the Odyssey, Odysseus and his men found themselves trapped in Polyphemus's cave on the slopes of Etna. Using their wits, they blinded the giant and escaped. But as they fled, Polyphemus called upon his father to curse Odysseus. The Greeks believed that volcanic landscapes, with their deep caves and steaming vents, were natural homes for creatures like the Cyclopes, places where gods and monsters left their mark on the world. But could this legend have a real-world explanation? Archaeologists believe the answer might lie in an unexpected source: fossils. Across Sicily, remains of prehistoric dwarf elephants have been found. Their skulls have a large central nasal cavity, which to an ancient observer might look like a giant single eye socket. It's easy to imagine how a Greek traveler stumbling upon one of these strange skulls could believe they had discovered the remains of a lost race of monstrous beings. What do you think? If you saw a giant skull with a single hole in the center, would you mistake it for a Cyclops? Let us know in the comments. The Greeks also associated Etna with blacksmithing because of its volcanic rock and natural heat sources. Early metalworkers around the region likely contributed to the myth, reinforcing the idea of a divine forge hidden within the mountain's depths. Even today, the legend of the Cyclopes continues to shape how we see Etna, a place of fire, mystery, and ancient power. Of all the beings said to dwell beneath Mount Etna, none was more terrifying than Typhon, the most fearsome monster in Greek mythology. Towering above the gods, with hundreds of dragon heads and a body wreathed in fire, he was said to be so powerful that even Zeus feared him. According to legend, Typhon waged war against Olympus, determined to overthrow the gods. The battle was apocalyptic. Mountains shattered, the sea boiled, and the sky turned black with smoke. At one point, Typhon even tore Zeus's tendons from his body, briefly defeating the king of the gods. But in the end, Zeus struck him down with a thunderbolt, hurling him beneath Mount Etna, where he remained trapped for eternity. Every eruption, every tremor was said to be Typhon thrashing in rage, spewing fire and smoke as he tried to break free. But why did the Greeks associate Typhon with Etna? Ancient sources suggest that the myth may have been inspired by real volcanic activity. The Greek historian Strabo wrote that locals believed Etna's lava flows were Typhon's fiery breath, and some even claimed to hear roars from deep within the earth, sounds that could be explained by volcanic gas explosions and shifting magma. There's also historical evidence linking Typhon's story to real disasters. In 122 BCE, one of Etna's most powerful eruptions darkened the sky with ash, devastated the land, and caused earthquakes that shook Sicily. To those who witnessed such destruction firsthand, the idea that a monster was buried beneath the mountain wasn't just mythology, it felt like reality. Even today, Etna's unpredictable eruptions keep the legend alive. Whether in ancient times or now, humans have always turned to stories to explain the raw power of nature, and few stories are as enduring as Typhon's eternal struggle beneath Mount Etna. For the ancient Greeks, the sight of Mount Etna's smoke and fire wasn't just a natural phenomenon. It was a sign of something supernatural at work. Beneath its molten core, Hephaestus, the Olympian god of fire and metalworking, was said to hammer out weapons and armor for the gods. Each eruption was seen as a sign that his forge was ablaze, and the tremors that shook the earth, the pounding of his mighty anvil. Unlike the other gods, Hephaestus was depicted as lame and deformed, cast down from Olympus by Zeus. But despite his exile, his skill was unmatched. From his fiery workshop beneath Etna, he and his assistants, the Cyclopes, crafted some of the most powerful weapons in mythology: Zeus' thunderbolts, Poseidon's trident, and the armor of Achilles. The connection between metalworking and volcanoes wasn't just mythological, it had real-world significance. Archaeological discoveries show that ancient blacksmiths often worked near volcanic regions, taking advantage of the natural heat and resources. Near Etna, evidence of early metalworking and workshops suggests that real artisans may have seen the volcano as a place of divine power. Basalt and obsidian, both volcanic materials, were used extensively in ancient tools, weapons, and even ritual objects. Ancient writers reinforce this link between Hephaestus and Etna. The poet Pindar described Hephaestus' forge as a place of smoke and fire, echoing the eruptions of Etna. Inscriptions found on volcanic islands like Lemnos, another place associated with Hephaestus, suggest that metalworkers may have dedicated their forges to him, blending industry with mythology. To this day, Etna remains restless, spewing fire and ash, just as it did in the age of the gods. For thousands of years, people have looked up at its glowing summit and seen more than just a volcano. They've seen the workshop of a god, still burning beneath the earth. Do you think there's any truth behind these ancient legends? Or were they just stories to explain the unknown? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. When the Romans took control of Sicily, they didn't discard the myths of Mount Etna. Instead, they reshaped them. The Greek god Hephaestus became Vulcan, the Roman god of fire, volcanoes, and metalworking. Just like his Greek counterpart, Vulcan was said to have his forge deep beneath Etna's molten core. But while Hephaestus was often depicted as a master craftsman, Vulcan was something else entirely, a god of raw, untamed destruction. The Romans feared Vulcan's power, believing he had the ability to unleash devastating fires and eruptions if not properly appeased. To prevent catastrophe, they held the Volcanalia, a festival celebrated every August 23rd, when Romans would offer fish and small animals as sacrifices to Vulcan's flames, hoping to keep his destructive forces at bay. The timing of the festival was no coincidence. It was held in the height of summer, when wildfires were most common, reinforcing the idea that Vulcan needed to be kept satisfied. But the Romans saw Etna as more than just a forge. It was also a guardian. Some legends claim that its eruptions protected Sicily from invaders, with lava flows acting as natural defenses. The historian Pliny the Elder recorded how Sicilian communities believed that Etna's eruptions were divine warnings, signaling incoming threats or disasters. Archaeology also supports the connection between Vulcan and real volcanic activity. Excavations near active volcanoes, including Etna, have uncovered Roman sanctuaries and altars dedicated to Vulcan, where offerings were likely made in times of unrest. These findings suggest that for the Romans, Vulcan wasn't just a myth, he was a force they had to reckon with, one whose presence was felt in every tremor beneath their feet. Ancient civilizations had deep connections to their gods and myths. If you're fascinated by how ancient people saw the world, our book, Secrets of the Ancient World, explores lost civilizations, unsolved mysteries, and ancient technologies that still intrigue us today. Get your copy, link in the pinned comment. For the ancient Greeks and Romans, Mount Etna wasn't just the forge of the gods. It was a portal to something far more terrifying. Many believed that deep beneath the volcano lay an entrance to the underworld, where lost souls, imprisoned giants, and dark forces stirred beneath the earth. Some even claimed that strange voices and eerie sounds could be heard rising from Etna's crater, whispering from the depths of Hades itself. This belief was reinforced by ancient literature. In Virgil's Aeneid, the hero Aeneas lands on the shores of Sicily and encounters a Greek castaway, one of Odysseus' men, who warns him of the horrors lurking near Etna. The land is described as a nightmarish wasteland, filled with flames, sulfurous smoke, and earth-shaking rumbles. To Virgil's audience, this was no mere volcano. It was a cursed place, a threshold between the world of the living and the realm of the dead. The idea of Etna as a gateway to the underworld wasn't just poetic imagery, it influenced real beliefs. The Greek historian Pindar wrote that the giants defeated by Zeus were buried beneath Etna, their violent struggles causing the eruptions. Later, the Roman naturalist Pliny the Elder recorded accounts of people witnessing mysterious lights and hearing unearthly noises near the volcano. Were these the cries of the damned, or simply the natural sounds of an unpredictable mountain? Archaeological evidence supports the idea that Etna held religious and supernatural significance. Ruins of ancient sanctuaries and necropolises have been discovered near its slopes, suggesting that people may have conducted funerary rites in its shadow, reinforcing its connection to the afterlife. Whether as a divine forge, a prison for monsters, or a passage to the dead, Etna has always been more than just a volcano. It has been a place where myth and reality collide. But as Roman rule faded, so did their gods. The forge of Vulcan gave way to darker legends, stories of demons and dragons lurking within the mountain's fiery depths. As Christianity spread across Europe, many of the ancient myths surrounding Mount Etna evolved to fit a new worldview. The gods of Olympus faded, but the idea that something monstrous lurked beneath the volcano remained. In medieval Sicily, this fear took on a new form. the legend of a great dragon, a creature of smoke and fire that lived within Etna's depths. According to local folklore, the Dragon of Etna was a colossal, winged beast with scales as dark as cooled lava and eyes that burned like embers. Some believed that its roars could be heard whenever the mountain rumbled, and that its breath, hotter than any forge, caused the violent eruptions that devastated entire villages. Others claimed the dragon was a servant of the devil himself, bound within the mountain as punishment for its evil, its fury unleashed every time the earth quaked. But why did Sicilians come to believe that Etna was home to a dragon? Historians suggest this legend may have been a Christian reinterpretation of older myths. Typhon, the Cyclopes, and Vulcan's forge were all transformed into a demonic entity, more fitting with medieval theology. Across Europe, volcanoes were increasingly seen as portals to hell, and Etna, with its fiery eruptions and choking smoke, became a natural symbol of the infernal. Medieval manuscripts and maps reinforce this belief. Some depict Etna alongside images of dragons and demons, reinforcing the idea that it was a cursed mountain. Others describe knights and saints battling fire-spewing beasts, likely inspired by Etna's eruptions. Legends never truly fade. Some locals still call Etna the Dragon's Mouth, a name as ancient as the fire within, a reminder of the deep and lasting power of myth. Throughout history, Mount Etna's eruptions weren't just seen as natural disasters, they were messages from the divine. To the ancient Greeks and Romans, a sudden outpouring of fire and ash could signal the gods' anger, a warning, or even punishment. These beliefs endured into the Middle Ages, when eruptions were often interpreted as signs of doom. One of the most famous examples occurred in 122 BCE, when Etna unleashed a devastating eruption. Ash darkened the sky, crops were destroyed, and the Roman city of Catania suffered heavy losses. The destruction was so severe that the Roman Senate took an unusual step. They exempted the city from taxes, believing that its people had already suffered enough under the gods' wrath. This suggests that even Rome's most powerful leaders saw volcanic eruptions as more than just geological events. They were omens demanding respect. By medieval times, these beliefs had only intensified. Monks and scholars recorded Etna's activity as divine warnings, either punishment for human sins or foreshadowing major events. In 1669, one of the most catastrophic eruptions in recorded history buried entire villages under lava. Some saw it as a sign of Sicily's turbulent future, as the eruption came at a time of political and social unrest. Religious processions were held, with priests carrying relics and crosses in hopes of calming the volcano's fury. Archaeological evidence suggests that Sicilians may have long sought supernatural protection against Etna's wrath. Excavations near the volcano have uncovered ancient altars and votive offerings, likely left by people trying to appease the gods. Whether through sacrifices, religious processions, or tax exemptions, one thing remained constant. For those living in Etna's shadow, its eruptions were never just random. They were a force that had to be understood, feared, and if possible, controlled. If you love uncovering the deeper mysteries of history, check out Secrets of the Ancient World. This book explores lost civilizations, advanced ancient technologies, and legendary artifacts that continue to puzzle historians today. Link in the pinned comment. Not all of Etna's myths are about gods and monsters. Some are rooted in Sicilian folklore, passed down through generations. One of the most unusual is the legend of the giant's beard, a tale that offers a mythical explanation for the volcano's thick, black ash. According to the story, long ago, a giant with a mighty beard roamed the slopes of Etna. His beard was so vast and tangled that it covered the entire mountain, blending with the dark rock and forests. But one day, in a violent eruption, the flames of Etna set the giant's beard ablaze. As he tried to put out the fire, great chunks of burning hair broke away and scattered into the wind, drifting across Sicily. The legend claims that this is why, even today, black ash falls from Etna whenever it erupts. It is the remnants of the giant's beard, still smoldering in the fire of the mountain. While this story may sound whimsical, it reflects a real geological phenomenon. Etna is known for producing large amounts of fine, black, volcanic ash, which can travel great distances during an eruption. To those who lived in the region centuries ago, the sight of thick, dark flakes covering the land must have seemed mysterious, an event that needed an explanation. Folklorists believe this tale may also be linked to older traditions of giant myths in Sicily. In some versions, the bearded giant is connected to Polyphemus, the Cyclopes of the Odyssey, suggesting that ancient Greek myths merged with local folklore over time. Even today, Sicilians continue to share this story, proving that while science explains the ash, the legend of the burning beard still holds its place in Etna's mythology. Mount Etna's eruptions have captivated storytellers for thousands of years, appearing in some of the most famous works of ancient literature. For the Greeks and Romans, Etna wasn't just a mountain. It was a symbol of divine power, chaos, and transformation. Writers, poets, and historians blended mythology with real events, creating dramatic tales that still shape how we see the volcano today. One of the earliest references to Etna comes from Homer's Odyssey. When Odysseus and his men encounter the Cyclops Polyphemus, they do so in a land of caves, smoke, and fire, a description that matches the real volcanic landscape of Etna. Later, in Virgil's Aeneid, the hero Aeneas arrives near Etna, where he meets a castaway from Odysseus' crew who warns him of the horrors of the land. The scene describes flames rising from the earth, roaring sounds from deep below, and the sky darkened by ash, imagery that mirrors the terrifying sight of an eruption. Beyond myth, historians documented Etna's eruptions with striking detail. Thucydides, one of Greece's greatest historians, recorded an eruption in 425 BCE, marking one of the first known scientific accounts of a volcanic event. Centuries later, Pliny the Elder, famous for his observations of Vesuvius, wrote about Etna's violent eruptions and their impact on local communities, treating the volcano as both a wonder and a threat. Even in the Middle Ages, Dante Alighieri may have drawn inspiration from Etna when envisioning the fiery landscapes of hell in the Divine Comedy. Today, Etna continues to appear in literature, film, and art, proving that while the science of volcanoes has advanced, the myths and legends surrounding Etna's eternal fire still burn just as brightly. Even in an age of science, Mount Etna continues to inspire myths, legends, and local superstitions. While the Greeks saw it as the forge of Hephaestus, and medieval Sicilians feared it as the mouth of a dragon, modern folklore has woven new tales around this ever-active volcano, ones that reflect both ancient beliefs and contemporary fears. One of the most enduring Sicilian traditions is the belief that Etna has a personality of its own. Many locals refer to the volcano as Mama Etna, Mother Etna, seeing it not just as a destructive force, but as a protector of the island. Some even claim that the volcano warns its people before erupting, giving subtle signs like unusual cloud formations or minor tremors. Scientists might explain these as natural precursors to an eruption, but for many, they reinforce the idea that Etna has an awareness of its own. If you're enjoying this deep dive into history and mythology, consider leaving a super thanks to support the channel. Your support helps us bring more fascinating stories like this to life. Another legend suggests that Etna chooses who to destroy and who to spare. Over the years, stories have emerged of houses, churches, and even entire villages being mysteriously untouched by lava while everything around them was consumed. While geology can explain how lava flows behave to those who live near Etna, these instances feel like more than coincidence. They are signs of the volcano's selective nature. Tourism has also contributed to Etna's evolving mythology. Visitors hear tales of strange lights flickering near the crater, eerie whispers carried by the wind, and ghostly apparitions of those who perished in past eruptions. Scientists may attribute these phenomena to escaping gases and shifting rock formations, but for many, Etna remains more than just a volcano. It is a place where science and legend intertwine, a living force that continues to shape the imagination of those who stand in its shadow. From the Cyclopes forging thunderbolts to the fiery wrath of Typhon, from dragons and omens to modern-day superstitions, Mount Etna has never been just a volcano. It has been a force of legend, a place where myth and reality collide. For thousands of years, its eruptions have shaped not only the landscape of Sicily, but also the beliefs, fears, and imaginations of those who live in its shadow. Even today, Etna's presence looms large. Scientists monitor its activity, studying its eruptions with satellites and seismographs, yet many Sicilians still see it as a living entity, one that protects, punishes, and even chooses who survives its fury. Myths may change, but our need to find meaning in nature's most powerful forces remains the same. And now, it's time to reveal the strangest story of all, one that blurs the line between history and legend. In the 5th century BCE, the Greek philosopher Empedocles became obsessed with Etna, believing he could unlock its secrets. According to ancient accounts, he threw himself into the volcano to prove his divinity, but Etna rejected him. Days later, the mountain supposedly spat out one of his bronze sandals, a final reminder that no mortal could claim the power of the gods. Was it a myth, a symbolic tale, or did something truly happen? The mystery, like the volcano itself, still burns. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the myths and history of Mount Etna. If you enjoyed this exploration, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to Armchair Archaeology for more deep dives into history's greatest legends. Do you think Etna has a mind of its own? Or is it all just science at work? Tell us in the comments. And if you have a legendary place you'd love us to explore next, drop your suggestion below. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep the fire of curiosity burning bright.